How are the 7 hot stocks I bought performing in this market? What is the Federal Reserve predicting for inflation come March? How is the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, and the Dow indices likely to perform in the coming weeks? Hang on. This is not financial nor professional advice. This video is for entertainment only. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I hope to give you interesting information. Last week I gave you 7 stocks that I was planning to invest in. Well, I have invested in them, and I thought I would bring you up to date on how they're doing in their first week of my investment. You want to keep in mind that I selected these stocks as the best stocks for me that I thought were available because they had low price to earnings, a low PE, they had high earnings growth, and they were generally undervalued. Looking at the chart at the bottom is my most favored stock because I've followed it for a long time and it does well in the long term. That's SMCI, Super Microcomputer, and they make all types of computer equipment and a lot of computer servers. And they've gone up 12% in the last 3 months, and they've gone up in the last month since I bought more of it. In second place, in my mind, is STM. That's ST Microelectronics, and that's gone up 23% in the last 3 months. And they make analog and digital semiconductors for commodities and for automotive, for cars. So they're a more practical, I guess, semiconductor maker, or semiconductors that you're more likely to use in your daily life. Number 3 of my favorites was Wire. That's Encore Wire, symbol WIRE, and they are in red, and they are tied with Insight Enterprises, which is in purple, and they both made about 33% in the last 3 months, and they've gone up in the last week. Wire does interior copper wiring and copper cables for the inside of all types of buildings, commercial and residential. And they benefit a lot from the price of copper going down, which has been happening. And Insight Enterprises, they do things with information technology and the cloud. They're a computer maker, essentially. And they've done very well. Again, they've done about 33%. I'm pleased with how my top 4 choices have done, and all 7 have done pretty good. Number 5 on the list was Sigma Lithium, and it's a lithium mining company, and it spiked up a couple weeks ago because it was rumored that Tesla was going to buy it and make it part of the company. Which I haven't heard any further information on that. It sounds like a rumor at this point still, but it's spiked up on that, and it's settled down since then, which is what I wanted to see. And then it started to go up, and it started to go up about the time that I bought it. So that's what I always like to see, a stock that after it spikes, it's come down somewhat, and then it starts to go up again. And that's, in my mind, that's sort of the ideal time to buy it. They've gone up about, it's in blue, they've gone up about 10% in the last 3 months. I expect them to be sort of a sluggish mover upper every so often, but then we're going to get spikes if Tesla can produce a cheaper car and get the prices of its cars down to the point where average people can buy them. Then you're going to see this thing go off the charts, I think. But until we hit that stage, it's going to be slowly moving up. But I think when Tesla's going to hit that point that they actually can produce like that, I think it's off a year or two anyway, probably. So we will see with that one. And number 6 on the list was CSIQ, which is Canadian Solar, and they have benefited from the solar industry going up generally. People want alternative energy. If you live in an area of the country, particularly the Southwest, I live in Arizona. Hey, we could provide energy to the world with the heat we have here. There's no doubt. It's just a case of getting it from here to wherever it needs to go. But it's been a good investment, and it's also gone up about 10% in the last 3 months, and I look for further growth on that. There is some interesting developments in the solar industry which the government is helping, and I'm going to go into that after I tell you about Digital Direct. And Digital Direct is DRCT, and they're in red on the chart. And they've gone up about 45% in the last 3 months. They spiked up to as much as 90% at one point. Okay, so I was waiting for this one to settle down, and it did settle down, and then it started to take off. So that's, in my mind, that's always the perfect time to buy it. And so I bought it when it's settled down and then starts to go up again. So I feel they do all kinds of digital advertising. And actually, I liked the action so much this week that I bought a little bit more than I had planned. And so I think it's a good investment. And it's a cheap stock. It runs $4.50, somewhere around there. As we look at the chart on First Solar, FSLR is the symbol. And it's shot up in the last 6 months. It was like around 130 around September, and now it's at $210 as I have filmed this. So it's really shot up, and they think a lot of it is the Inflation Reduction Act. When you look at that trailing price to earnings of 189, wow, I don't know. It just seems like Canadian Solar, in my mind, is probably it's less speculative. I think Canadian Solar is going to do fine. I think First Solar is a speculative investment, and there's a reason for it, and it's all the tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden and Congress passed. The stock market seems to be mostly in a position of deciding which way it's going to go, and it seems like it's right at the 50-yard line in this football game of economics, and it's trying to decide which way to go. On this last Friday, one of the federal governors, the Federal Reserve governors, named Bostic, he said that the Fed could be in position by mid to late summer to pivot if the data look good, if inflation looks like it's receding. And there's data from the Cleveland Federal Reserve, that we may well be in a position where inflation is receding. It's sort of amazing to me that people are constantly asking, what does the Fed think inflation will do? Okay, the Fed is telling you every day what they think inflation will do, and they do it at the Cleveland Fed, and they predicted a month over month change and also inflation on a year over year basis. And for February, they're predicting that the inflation rate will increase 0.54%, which is coming up on March 14th when they're going to announce this. And they're usually pretty close with these estimates. So I think that's going to be not so great, not so good on March 14th. But the exciting news is what they're predicting for March of 2023. But we won't get that news until April. Okay. So I think the good news won't be delivered until April. And this March 14th, I think we're going to get a not so great number. It doesn't look like it's going to be god awful, but it's not so great. The number we get on March 14th will be right now they're forecasting that it'll be about 6.21% if you look at the inflation year over year part of this chart. But the good news again comes for their March prediction, which comes out in April, where they're predicting that the inflation CPI will be 5.38%. So I think we have good news on the way, and that's why Powell keeps saying we see signs of deflation. For what it's worth, Costco has recently said that they see signs that inflation is coming down. And now it's time for Market Watch, where we take a look at the S&P 500, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, and try to make our best guess what they're likely to do in the next week or so. As we look at this chart of the S&P 500, we can see that it's at a decision point. Down below the chart is the relative strength, which is at 53, and you know, it goes from 0 to 100, and 53 is right in the middle. So, okay, it's virtually almost right at the middle. And the graph below that, the MACD, is at the bottom, and that's a momentum indicator, and the momentum is near zero, which means there's neither upside momentum or downside momentum. It's just flat. It's at a point of decision. But it did end Friday up on some hopium that the Fed would consider pivoting. The market hears anything that sounds mildly positive, and they take it as an excuse to go positive. So I expect the market to keep going up at least until the 14th, when we get a somewhat disappointing CPI number. But I don't think it's going to be massively disappointing, simply because I think the number in reflects February's inflation, and I think inflation has continued to come down, especially with gas prices remaining relatively moderate. The S&P 500 finished the week above its 50-day moving average, and I think it wants to go somewhat higher for at least the next week. As we look at the 5-year chart of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, we can see that it's above its 50-day average by about 700 points or so. And its relative strength is 52, so it's right at that midpoint. And there's no major momentum either upward or downward on a 5-year basis. So again, this is at a decision point. It is above its 50 day average when it had been below the 50-day average for some time, for some months. So this is what we're all excited about, that hopefully we follow through on Monday and this keeps going up in a meaningful way. As we look at the 5-year chart on the NASDAQ is finished Friday a little bit above its 50-day moving average. No big shakes, but it was below it before then, and so we were happy to see it go above the 50-day average. Its relative strength is 53, which is no big shakes. Again, it turns probably slightly positive. When it goes over 50, it's slightly positive. We were glad to see that, and we hope there's a follow through with this. But there's no big momentum either up or down with it. I would say the momentum temporarily is slightly positive if we get follow through on next week following this Friday upswing. I think the NASDAQ is the one, if we're thinking risk on and the people are thinking in the back of their minds, oh, the Fed could pause or pivot at some point, that the NASDAQ is going to be the main beneficiary. So I would expect it also to go up before the CPI number on March 14th, which I don't think is going to be a big downer, but you never know with these markets. A lot depends on what the Fed speakers say, and they come out daily and say things. Be sure to like and subscribe. Smash that like button, and I hope to see you in the future, and good luck to us all. We're all going to need it, but I think we should be good until March 14th when the CPI number comes out. Thank you.